5 forgotten British invasion bands coming up next on Music Meanderings. I'm Mike Lamneck. This is Music Meanderings. Today we're going to take a look at 5 forgotten British invasion bands. Now, the British invasion was a cultural phenomenon in the 1960s where rock and pop music acts from and around the United Kingdom became popular in the United States. Of course, starting with the Beatles in their first visit to America in 1964, British pop and rock groups like the Rolling Stones, The Who, The Kinks, Dave Clark 5, The Hollies, Herman's Hermits, The Animals, and many, many others had a big impact on the counterculture developing at the time. Well, these are a few of the perhaps lesser-known British invasion bands. Pretty Things, an English rock band formed in September 1963 in Kent. They took their name from the Bo Diddley hit Pretty Thing from 1955. They released 5 studio albums, including their debut, The Pretty Things, and very influential first rock opera, S.F. Sorrow. If you haven't heard that, that's definitely worth checking out. Along with 4 EPs, they had 15 UK singles, and they reformed later in 1971, continued through 1976 to issue 3 more studio albums, and then reformed once again from 1979 to 2020, releasing another 5 studio albums. Well, perhaps you have heard of this British invasion band. I know when I worked in the oldies format, we used to play a lot of their songs. They were named after the John Wayne Western of the same name, The Searchers. And they have gone down in history as one of Liverpool's most successful groups. Of course, if it wasn't for 4 other lads previously mentioned, perhaps they would have been Liverpool's most popular group. The Searchers charted 14 singles on the Billboard chart between 1964 and 1971, including Needles and Pins, or Needles and Pinza, as it's sung a lot of times, and also, of course, a very popular Love Potion number 9. They tied for being the second group from Liverpool after the Beatles to have a hit in the U.S. with Needles and Pins, and the Swinging Blue Jeans, Hippie Hippie Shake. They both reached the Hot 100 on March 7th, 1964. Looking at 5 British invasion bands that you might not have heard of or perhaps have forgotten about. Them, a Northern Irish rock band forming in Belfast in April of 1964. Prominently known for their 1964 garage rock classic Gloria, and for introducing us to Van Morrison and starting his musical career. Them scored 2 UK hits in 1965 with Baby Please Don't Go and Here Comes Tonight, and that song and Mystic Eyes were also top 40 hits in the U.S. Of the 5 British invasion bands that I'm mentioning today, this one's probably the least known, and perhaps you haven't heard of them before. Talking about Unit 4 Plus 2. Now, as the name indicates, they began as a quartet comprising musicians who would never be heard from again after enjoying their initial brush with fame. But the Plus 2, well, that was another story. Russ Ballard and Bob Henrit, they would go on to be co-founders of the band Argent, and they were session players hired to help the group out. Group co-founders Tommy Moeller and Brian Parker co-wrote their hit Concrete and Clay, which hit number 1 in the UK and even rose to number 28 on the US charts. And if somebody mentions the song Wild Thing, you've probably heard the song, but might not remember the band that originally had it on the charts, and that was the Troggs, originally called the Troglodytes. They wisely shortened their name. Formed in Andover, Hampshire in May 1964. Their most famous song, of course, the chart topper Wild Thing, With a Girl Like You, and the beautiful Love Is All Around, all of which sold over 1 million copies and were awarded gold records. Wild Thing is ranked number 257 on the Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time, and it was a huge influence on garage rock and punk rock. If you were in a band back then, or even a newer band, perhaps that's one of those songs that you learned to play first. There are many cover versions, including ones by Jimi Hendrix, the all-female early 70s rock group Fanny. I used to have that single growing up, and even a version by comedian Sam Kinison. Well, there you go. 5 maybe lesser known British invasion groups. Who are some British invasion groups that are your favorites? Please comment below and be sure to subscribe to Music Meanderings.